I'm Rob Fitzpatrick. I'm your host. Before I begin my speech, I'd like to direct your attention to the single table with a chair at the front of the room. This chair represents who we've lost in addiction. Addiction and death not only causes immense suffering for the person experiencing it, but also for the family and friends left behind. Please take a moment of silence to honor and remember those we've lost too soon. My name is Rob Fitzpatrick, and I'm Director of Operations at Miklat. I'd like to begin by thanking Evangel Church for being such incredible, gracious hosts and offering us these amenities. I'd also like to thank the church members, volunteers from the community, and Miklat clients and alumni for helping to create this magical night. Most of all, I'd like to thank our multi-talented chef, Cece MacDonald, who is the vision of this event and set the pieces in motion with a small group of dedicated volunteers. Thank you, Steve. And I'd like to wish a very happy birthday to Inger Austenson.
Celebrating his birthday.
6 years ago, right around this time, I was just entering the treatment center in Maple Ridge. I would have never dreamt of myself standing here today, a part of something so incredibly beautiful. At that time in my life, I felt very alone, very defeated, barely clinging to life. I had no idea if I would live much longer, but I knew that if I did survive, I would dedicate myself to whatever God had in store for me. I wasn't always a believer in God. It was thrust upon me when my partner died of an overdose, and I nearly took my own life as I felt the world crashing around me. I had a near-death experience, which led me to believe that there is more to this world than meets the eye. Months later, someone I'd never met prayed for my broken ankle at a mall in downtown Nanaimo. Something about that person, a complete stranger, wanting to heal me, of all people, a homeless drug addict, gave me something to ponder. I, of course, laughed it off at the time. Really? Who could heal broken bones with a prayer? Looking back, that person did more than heal my broken bones. During my homelessness, I felt protected by an unseen force. So many times I'd overdosed alone and stopped breathing entirely, only to find myself being revived using naloxone or by complete strangers breathing into my lungs and providing CPR. Where did these people come from, and why were they reviving me of all people? Perhaps there was a purpose to the madness. Perhaps I was supposed to experience what I had in order to do what I'm doing today. I know I would not be reading this speech today if they had not had compassion on me as they passed by. I feel that life is a series of lessons, personal to each of us, ultimately with the purpose of leading to an awakening of our spirit and realization of our true calling. My hope is that every one of us on earth awakens to our calling. Boy, the world would be a much better place. Our organization is not faith-based. We don't require our clients to believe in God, nor do we push it on them. We find that through experiencing the love of people who have faith in the unseen, or a belief in something beyond themselves, that experience in itself will spark an awakening such as the one I had when I realized people cared for me unconditionally by praying for me in my suffering. One of the greatest lessons which I've learned in the chaos of addiction is that we, people suffering from a substance use disorder, yearn to be free, but for various reasons we find comfort in our misery, in the throes of addiction, self-medicating our individual trauma and self-perceived shortcomings. We tend to think of ourselves as outcasts, unloved by society, and tossed under the carpet. We don't realize that just isn't true. There are many people who care and want the best for us. Family, friends, counselors, probation officers, people working graveyard shifts in shelters, outreach workers, harm reduction organizations, paramedics, lawmakers, even police officers. We must break free from the lies we tell ourselves, find hope, and find purpose. Regardless of what brought us to that dark space, we all wish for something better. I know now that life does not end in addiction, that recovery is possible and attainable for everyone. Each person's recovery is personal. Just as we are all on our own path in life, recovery is as unique as the person experiencing it. We attempt to expose our clients to as many experiences as possible with our limited funds, so that when they leave treatment, they have a taste of hope and happiness and break free. During my travels, late in the throes of my addiction, I found safety in shelters, safe injection sites, and soup kitchens. The organizations running them provided me with what I needed to survive. Without them, I would not be here today. And I know many of the men in my treatment center would not be either. So I give thanks to those local organizations that meet people where they are at. Tonight, we are here to celebrate our own organization, the staff, and the men who have come through our doors in the past 32 months. One thing that has kept us strong is our passionate employees and board members. Many of us worked tirelessly over a year and a half preparing for clients. From the many volunteers who repaired walls, painted, did yard work, moved furniture, and pressure washed, to the donors who filled the rooms with furniture, food, beds, and all the amenities we would need to make our house into a comfortable home. To the volunteers who worked on government licensing and policy writing, we would not be able to do what we do without the incredible support of the community of Powell River. So thank you. The staff and board members treat this as a calling, not a job. And you can see it in their work ethic and in the results. Many of the clients who graduate are leading happy lives, reuniting with family, giving back to the communities they live in, sharing what they've learned with others, and becoming the people they were destined to be. Some have slipped along the way, and we are happy to bring them back. Often it is said to us they have found Miklat to be the most effective program, and we've had several return guests who have had success after their second or third trial. I'd like to publicly thank our past and present board of directors, the people who were here from the very beginning, the late Frank Piper, who had the dream of starting an affordable recovery center here, Sean Susarchuk, who was entrusted with the dream when Frank passed, his widow, Sharon Justina, Gilles Patino, Nina Piers, and I'd also like to thank the volunteers who came later, people like Mardina Robertson, who gave countless hours filing paperwork, and board members who came along at just the right moment. Joan Fitzpatrick, Fraser Ross, Lola Amundsen, and Joanne Wright. They are the unsung heroes who are the backbone of our society, along with the hardworking staff members, Chris Weeks, Stuart Barnes, and Jay Austin. I had no idea what lay ahead of me when I arrived in Powell River. I knew it would be a challenge for me in ways I couldn't imagine and lead to a better life, but I could never imagine the incredible journey we would take together. If every community had what we have here, we would be well on our way to solving the epidemic of addiction sweeping our country. This is where the solution lies, in community-based treatment, where people feel a part of something special. What is still missing is rapid access to detox and treatment. This community is working towards that, with detox beds opening up soon, and our expansion to 24 beds next year. But there is still much work to be done ahead, And we want to remove wait lists completely, as well as offer women in our community the same services we offer men. These are the next logical steps. Powell River has the markings to be truly a recovery-focused city with incredible beauty and natural resources, and all it takes for us as a community to come together and to make it happen. Thank you all so very much for being here and for being part of tonight's celebration. As promised, this is going to be an evening of storytelling and encouragement. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Lee up to speak, and we'll give him 5 minutes to tell us a little bit about his involvement with Miklat. And immediately following Lee, we will have Eli share.
Everybody hear me?
Nope.
I've never done.
Go ahead, talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. I've never done a mic thing before, so. Like Rob said, my name's Lee Rogers. I made it through Miklat about 1.5 years ago. If you would have seen me about 2 years ago, I was 175 pounds. My lovely wife, I pretty much put her through the ringers. Got to a point where it was no longer safe for me to be in the house. I have 3 young children. At the time I had 2, 1 on the way. And yeah, I put my family through so much trauma and everything with my addiction. I've been an addict my whole life. I come from a broken childhood, broken home. At the age of 13, I was put into foster care because I was at school, and it's the typical thing. I went to gym class, took off my shirt. My body was covered with belts, belt marks, bruises. The school seen that, called social services. I got picked up that day and put in foster care. I got some pretty good foster parents, but once I learned that it wasn't okay for adults to hit children, I unleashed. I had a lot of anger that came out of me. And for 3 years, I've been through countless group homes. I've been at all the young offender centers in Alberta. No group home or foster home would accept me. They'd put my file on the table and they'd be like, no, we're not taking them, we're not taking them. So at 16, the government looked at me and they're like, well, we can't find any place for you to live. Can you find your own place to stay? Get to Grand Prairie, the government, they pay for a place for me to live. And all the friends I had met earlier, they were all working in shacks and being in a gang and doing all that stuff. And I had no family, and so of course I hooked up with them, and I got the love and the acceptance I was looking for through gang life and all those people. And they did drugs, so at 16, I was introduced to methamphetamine. That took 2.5 years of my life. Again, I was so skinny. You could see all my skeleton, my face, my chin. You could see every bone in my body. And yeah, my mom, she actually took me in at that point, and I got clean. And that lasted for not very long. I was smoking marijuana, and then started drinking again, left my parents, traveled all over the place thinking, I was working, I was drinking, I was being a functioning alcoholic, and I thought, that was okay. Traveled all the way around Canada, been to every major city, drinking, ended up in drunk tanks all across Canada. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going back to Vancouver Island. I'm gonna go stay there. And that's where I knew my wife from earlier. She said she had a place for me to stay. So I went and lived with her. A year later, things have been going well with her. We were both, in addiction. Hers was different than mine, whatever. But a year later, we finally made it Facebook official that we were going to be boyfriend and girlfriend on Facebook. And 1 week later, we found out we were pregnant with our first kid. I was like, wow, that escalated fast. So my amazing wife, right then and there, once we found out we were pregnant, her drinking days were done. And she hasn't picked up since that day, but I did pretty good for a little bit, and my addictions followed me through to my family. I was managing it pretty well, and then we had our second kid, and things got a little bit more crazy, and I was hiding it, and every lie I could to go outside and run to the ATM to take out money, to get more, just all the time, steady. And then she was catching on to that. She wasn't very happy with me at the point, but she loved me, and what was she gonna do, I'd just lie to her, I'd find ways, she'd get mad, whatever, I didn't care. And then we got pregnant with our third one, and my drug addiction, I was using cocaine pretty bad, smoking it, Oxycontin, things like that. I was really bad. And yeah, she ended up calling her a pretty bad name because I was hungover and I didn't want to have to deal and help with the boys and stuff like that, and I didn't want to deal with it, and so I called her a pretty bad name, and she had enough, and that was it. And it was time for me to leave the house. So I left the house into Powell River, not knowing anybody or anything. Met up with the locals in Powell River, and I went on a big tear. Pretty big, bad tear. And one of the things I had said is I would never do heroin. And I didn't do heroin. And until I was in a shack in town, and all of a sudden there was no cocaine anywhere, couldn't find it. And I went into the bathroom, all my friends, so-called friends, they're all nodding out. And they're all high, and I just wanted to get high, and I go in the bathroom and there's a tin foil with heroin and a lighter, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm doing heroin tonight. Didn't take much longer until I overdosed and died. Had to get brought back to life, and once I got brought back to life, that's when I was like, yeah, I gotta do something different. I'm gonna lose my kids, I'm gonna lose everything important to me. So I tried getting sober. My wife let me in the house. At that point, her dad said I'm not allowed back. There's no way I'm allowed back. She snuck me in, and I got a couple weeks under me detoxed, and then I couldn't handle it. And I got her to drive me to town to do something, and I jumped out of the car on Main Street and went and used and picked up again. It was a couple more weeks of that. Let me back in. She let me in the house one more time on the pretext that I would go to treatment. I had a social worker. She was getting me into treatment, and I went to Port Coquitlam. And when I got there, I was detoxed, and I started getting sober, and my personality came out. I'm quite a verbal person. I have a hard time watching my mouth. And there was 22 guys in that house. And it didn't take long until I got in an altercation with somebody in the house, and that was it. 9 o'clock at night, they told me, pack your stuff, you're out of here. Like, we don't have a bed for you anymore. I have no money in my pocket. I don't know anywhere in Vancouver. I have no friends in Vancouver or anything. By God's grace, my wife was able to get me some money, and my uncle, by chance, was in Vancouver that night, so he picked me up and brought me to his hotel, and then caught a bus back to Powell River, and I was still on the waiting list to get to Miklat, and it was about a week after. I know Nina from before, and Rob's like, calls me, he's like, yeah, we got a space opening up. Do you want to come? And it was right away I was in there. Thanks to Nina and Rob and all that and everybody. And yeah, I got to Miklat, and I broke so many rules. They had one hell of a time trying to keep me entertained, and I had a hard time keeping myself entertained, but it was good. I made it through there. It was a small house of guys. I think there was only like 10 to 12 guys there. So the one-on-one interactions with everybody, with Fraser, with Nina, Lola, everything, it was really good. It was really close and personal. And I made it through the 12 steps. I completed the 12-step program. I also completed Smart Recovery in that time. I just used that 90 days in Miklat to get everything I could done so that I would be able to survive once I got out into the real world back with my family, to make sure I had tools to, deal with life's problems. And I achieved that. I've got all the tools and everything, I'm not running out to use the first time something gets hard. I got 3 young boys, 2, 5, and 8, and they keep me so busy and everything, and I just love it, and my life has changed 100%, and I wake up every day happy that I'm alive still, that I didn't die, that I have good friends like Rob and Stu and everybody on my side, and that's it. Thank you very much, guys. Woo-hoo!
What's everyone doing tonight?
Hey, Eli.
Hungry? God, I could talk about this subject for forever, but I don't want to keep you guys any hungrier than you already are, but I will. I was asked to speak, so my name's Eli, and I'm in recovery. Some of you guys know me from Miklat, and some of you guys know me just in the recovery community. Some of you guys know me from knocking on your door when I ran for city council this year. And I'm just so grateful to be here and just to be living in Powell River today. I'm just going to read a quick excerpt from 6 years ago. It was I woke up one day and the front page of the Globe and Mail was an article written by my sister called My Brother the Addict. And I'm getting a little emotional. I just want to read a little excerpt about this. It's long, but I'm just going to read a little bit about it. This is 6 years ago. My parents are emotionally exhausted, but they refuse to give up. I went on an awkward first date, and the conversation usually goes something like this. First, he should detox. He has tried detox centers multiple times. However, there are rarely beds available. Imagine convincing an addict to go to detox and then telling him he has to wait. When he does finally get admitted, he can leave at any time in his own free will. Has he been to rehab? We have tried rehab, both public and private. Public has a long wait list and lacks resources in terms of staff and services. Private rehabs cost around $20,000 to $30,000 a month. Have you tried the recovery house? Yes. Do you ever see him? My parents and I talk to my brother on a daily basis and see him several times a week. Our conversations can be enjoyable, but we have seen him overdose so many times that we are heartbreakingly jaded by the experience. The last meal I had alone with my brother ended with me calling an ambulance as he returned from the bathroom clearly inebriated, incoherent, and then fully convulsing. We pray that they admit him so that we just know exactly where he is. This rarely happens. Cut him off. Oh, we've tried that. Conversations about my brother also include tips such as just let him be homeless. Stop enabling him. Let him rack up a bill with a drug dealer and get beaten up. That will teach him. Or, you have tried everything, just give up. But the crowd favorite, which is always said in a hopeful, encouraging tone and with such conviction, is just let him hit rock bottom. He will not hit rock bottom. He will not have the miraculous epiphany that you would expect. My brother's rock bottom is 6 feet under where I stand. This is our reality. No one chooses this life. What are we supposed to do? We have clearly tried everything. You know, I get emotional reading this, and it's not tears of sadness reading something like this. It's tears of joy. The article is really long, and it goes into horrific detail about, this life that I was. But I have to emphasize that. It's a life that I was. I am no longer any of these things anymore. I want to end this with this. What brought me to Powell River 3 years ago was I was coming home from a bar or a house, I don't remember, and I was in Edmonton. I was run over by a vehicle, and I broke 17 bones. And I can tell you right now, that was the single greatest thing to happen to me in years, because it made me end up right here. And when I got here, I had no friends, no connections, I couldn't walk, I was in a wheelchair. I needed a village. And let me tell you, I got a village. I had people in this very room support me to get physically better, mentally better, emotionally better, socially better. So much better, in fact, that I decided crazily enough to run for city council, and I almost got in. I promise you, it takes work, but we are worth it. Everyone is worth it. What is more important in this world than a human life? And that's what we're talking about right here. And so I thank each and every one of you, and I wish you guys all a happy holidays, and thank you for asking me to share.
We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people. And economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. You know, this is what comes, this is the promises that I've got from a program of recovery, right? You know, I came here a broken man, you know. I wrote so much stuff down here and I don't even want to use it. But I'm gonna.
Come on, Cece. You can do this. You got it, Cece.
Where's John? Right here. This didn't happen in our dress rehearsal, pal.
Come on, you got it.
Okay. You know, yeah, I want to thank Steve and everybody that put this on, you know. Let's give him another hand, please. I arrived here in Powell River in November of 2021 of last year. An absolute broken man. A hopeless variety, hopeless. Completely lost, empty, and defeated. I see today that moment would catapult me from a bottom frequency to a power greater than myself. I call faith that works today. There's been so many that have helped me stand tall. You know who you are. There's many in this room, and my fine gentleman there I walk with today, the tall men there. I stand here today to give thanks to Miklat Society. You know, Rob, Lola, Sean, Frank that's not here, so many others that had this idea of recovery and had given me a chance. To the meal I received when I arrived, the warm bed, where I was able to finally lay my head after another run with this disease. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the clinical staff. Fraser, I don't believe he's here tonight, but you gave me direction to this precious gift we call meaning and purpose. We had a great conversation about a year ago, right at this time, in the forest, in a circle, with a few men. You asked me one question: where do I want to be in a year? You know, I stand here and I'm right in the middle of that thought and action. Thank you. That's my good friend Nina. You helped so many, my friend. I bear witness to many facilities that specialize in alcohol and drug addiction. None have exposed the truth about the inside to my pain. Your gift, Nina, to expose the wounded child, right? That wounded inner child. Slowly, gently, to allow me to build a relationship with this little boy. This discovery has opened a door and a channel to love. than to be loved. Bear with me. I just want to thank you, Nina. You know, I know how much, what's so beautiful about it is, and you spoke to me as well, is you transmit this because of your experience. You know, and that's why you're so amazing at it, and you help so many of us. You know, and then another most beautiful thing is you turned around and told me that when I got it, you know, when the Spirit really speaks to me, right? And then you said, now go back and share it. Now go back and share that. And that sits so beautiful of me, right? Because that's my primary purpose, right? To stay sober and help another alcoholic or an addict, right? And I have this solution today, right? Alcohol and drugs is just my solution. It's not my solution today, right? I have a problem inside, right? And Miklat, and so many in this community, right? I've just been lifted up by all of you. Tim and Dora. You know, I came here my first Christmas, and you had a gift for me that meant the world. Thank you. Thank you. And so many. And the men that come to church, come to the recovery house, McConna, Josh, Aaron, Dan, John. There's so many others that have come, you know, but these men come consistently and carry this word, yeah. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people. And economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. You know, this is what comes, this is the promises that I've got from a program of recovery, right? You know, I came here a broken man, you know. I wrote so much stuff down here and I don't even want to use it. But I'm gonna. Where's John? This didn't happen in our dress rehearsal, pal. You know, yeah, I want to thank Steve and everybody that put this on, you know. Let's give him another hand, please. I arrived here in Powell River in November of 2021 of last year. An absolute broken man. A hopeless variety, hopeless. Completely lost, empty, and defeated. I see today that moment would catapult me from a bottom frequency to a power greater than myself. I call faith that works today. There's been so many that have helped me stand tall. You know who you are. There's many in this room, and my fine gentleman there I walk with today, the 12 men there. I stand here today to give thanks to Miklat Society. You know, Rob, Lola, Sean, Frank that's not here, so many others that have this idea of recovery and had given me a chance. To the meal I received when I arrived, the warm bed, where I was able to finally lay my head after another run with this disease. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the clinical staff. Fraser, I don't believe he's here tonight, but You gave me direction to this precious gift we call meaning and purpose. We had a great conversation about a year ago, right at this time, in the forest, in a circle, with a few men. You asked me one question: where do I want to be in a year? I stand here and I'm right in the middle of that thought and action. Thank you. That's my good friend Nina. You helped so many, my friend. I bear witness to many facilities that specialize in alcohol and drug addiction. None have exposed the truth about the inside to my pain. Your gift, Nina, to expose the wounded child, right? That wounded inner child. Slowly, gently, to allow me to build a relationship with this little boy. This discovery has opened a door and a channel to love and to be loved. Bear with me. I just want to thank you, Nina. I know how much, what's so beautiful about it is, and you spoke to me as well, is you transmit this because of your experience. And that's why you're so amazing at it, and you help so many of us. And then another most beautiful thing is you turned around and told me that when I got it, when the Spirit really speaks to me, right? And then you said, now go back and share it. Now go back and share that. And that sits so beautiful with me, right? Because that's my primary purpose, right? To stay sober and help another alcoholic or an addict, right? And I have this solution today, right? Alcohol and drugs is just my solution. It's not my solution today, right? I have a problem inside, right? And Miklat and so many in this community, right? I've just been lifted up by all of you. Tim and Dora. I came here my first Christmas, and you had a gift for me that meant the world. Thank you. Thank you. And so many. And the men that come to church, come to the recovery house, McConna, Josh, Aaron, Dan, John. There's so many others that have come, but these men come consistently and carry this word, kind, loving, tolerant, patience, right? Been able to transmit this to me, right? And now I get to, I've come to believe, doesn't matter what I believe in, but I've come to believe that Cece can't fix Cece with his own, I can't fix myself, right? I need power. Just amazing. One thing I wanted to share with you is there's I've been to a lot of recovery houses in the city. Spent a lot of time in the last 10 years in and out of these places that have been around and established in the community for 20 years, 25, 30 years. So I've seen where this society is going. I know what it can bring to the community, and I know how many men are coming. They're coming to this community because of this society, right? I know they are. 100 a year. And this community is going to stand them up. I know. I'm having the experience, right? And I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. This is my home today, filled with love, supported by so many. And the fellowship, right? We have a fellowship here that's just amazing. Because once you leave this recovery house, I can't just go back to what I'm doing, right? But I get to go and hang out with a bunch of people that are staying sober in this community, that are self-supporting members of this community that contribute. That's amazing, right? So I I want to be here for this. I want to be here in 20 years, right? That's my purpose today, is to stay close to the men that are suffering, because they help me to stay sober by me helping them. That's what this is about, so I'm eternally grateful. Brian, I love you. I think you're up next. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, good evening, folks. My name is Brian, and like Cece, I am an alcoholic. Now, I've learned a lot of things over the years that I have journeyed this road. One of the things I've learned is that the mind will only absorb what the seat can endure. So I would invite you to stand up for a moment and just kind of stretch. And
Thank you, Brian. Oh my gosh, this is so good.
if you choose to, you don't have to.
Oh. Thank you, Brian.
Well, please sit down unless you want to keep standing. It's totally up to you.
You're hilarious. He's hilarious.
They've allotted me 30 minutes. I'm going to try to honor that because I know that you are, one, you've paid a lot of money to be here, and we greatly appreciate that. But I know your time is valuable too. So, hey Siri, set timer for 2 hours. When I first got the call from Lola, who was a house manager at Miklat, and she asked me to share with you a little bit about my experience, both at Miklat and in life. The first thing that hit me was I was just incredibly honored, and next I was incredibly humbled. There's something about this house that is unlike any place I've ever experienced in my life. But I was also a little bit confused, and the confusion came in the form of, if you guys knew half the things that I thought about that ran through this head, you'd never invite me to speak at a place like this. It's not that funny. If I knew half the things that you guys thought about, I wouldn't even talk to you. Folks, and I know there's some of you for sure that are thinking, look how red that guy's face is. He's probably drunk. I have a skin condition called rosacea. My face has always looked like this, and it's exacerbated by a number of things. One of the things it's exacerbated by is alcohol. You should have seen what my face looked like when I was drinking. But I can tell you this, today I am 474 days sober, and I am so excited and so thrilled. Thank you. I've had a number of accomplishments in my years on this planet. Almost all of them pale in comparison to what I experienced at the Miklat Recovery Society, and the way it has changed my life, and the way it has altered my perspective, helped me to come to terms with my own brokenness, and helped me to understand something of a preferable future. I have that today. I did not always have that. When Lola first asked me to share with you what Miklat means to me, in order for me to do that in a way that's at all effective, you need to understand a little bit about what brought me to Miklat in the first place. Now, before I dive in, I'd like to do this with you if I could. I'm going to ask you 3 simple questions. Now, please don't share them with the person next to you. Don't share them with your spouse. Don't share them around the table. Just keep the answers to these questions that you come up with in your mind. I'd like you to think, if you would, think of a color that begins with the letter B. And next, I'd like you to think of an animal that begins with the letter E. And finally, I'd like you to think of a country that begins with the letter D. And I promise you, if we have time at the end, we'll get back to this, okay? So I'd like to dive in, if I could. The renowned psychologist, Dr. Gabor Mate, says this. He says, not everyone who has had a traumatic childhood becomes an addict. But every addict has had a traumatic childhood. Now, I don't know if that's true, and there's no way he can know, because you'd have to actually know every addict in order to know that, but I can tell you this much, that has been my experience. When I was 6 years old, my father opened our home to his best friend, who was on again, off again with his wife. He was with her, and then he'd do something stupid, and she'd kick him out. And when he was off again, he'd come and live with us. Now, let's just call him, we'll call him John, because, well, that was his name. John would come and live with us. And we were very poor growing up. We lived in a very small house. There was 5 kids plus my parents, so there was 7 of us in this small house. Now, our house was so small that if you threw a rock through the window, you could hit the whole family. And John would come and live with us. We had 2 bedrooms in the house. My younger sisters shared a bedroom. My younger sister will tell you this. She'll tell anyone who listens to this. She'll say, you know, it's not that I'm mom and dad's favorite. It's not that they spoil me all the time. It's simply that they just kept having kids until they found one they liked. So my 2 sisters shared a bedroom. My parents shared a bedroom. And my 3 brothers shared kind of the attic. Attic, not attic. And we kind of, it was this big room, big wide open room. There was no closets, nothing like that, a couple of windows. And we had 3 beds. And for whatever reason, my parents thought it would be okay to allow my dad's best friend, when he was off again, to sleep in my bed with me. And sometimes for days, and sometimes for weeks, and sometimes for months on end, I experienced unspeakable horrors at the hands of my father's best friend. I think that's some of the traumatic experience that Gabor Mate says happens to some who become addicts. There's a psychological term for what I did. It's called dissociation. And really what it means is it means to compartmentalize. Your brain says, I have to protect you because you can't handle what's going on. Until you take those traumatic things and you put them in a part of your brain that you never access. And that's how you live your life. Really what it is a form of escape. And that's all it is. We're just escaping. I don't have to be here. So I would figuratively leave my body. And I would watch the horrors being inflicted on this little boy from some corner in the room. I would escape, and it was a healthy way for me to cope. It's the only way a child of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 years old could. But what it did was it taught me a pattern of escaping. And I used that throughout my entire life. I would escape one thing by one substance, something else by another substance. My first addiction was the applause of men. Now I have, my background is in psychology and theology. So I'm familiar with this setting. We're standing up. Now, to be fair, I haven't stood in a church on a stage and preached in 20 years. But it's something I'm fairly comfortable with. It's something I understand. My first addiction was the applause of people. Oh, how I loved finishing a sermon and have people come up, oh, Pastor Brian, thank you so much. And I got that over and over and over. And not once in the 14 years of my marriage did I ever walk home and have my wife standing at the top of the stairs going, you're the man, come on, not once. But I got that at the church. So that's where I invested everything. to the peril of my family. And in the middle of that investing, life boiled down to a fireside chat, and I had an affair with a young woman that I was counseling. Now, that doesn't go over well when you're a pastor. And there's a process that churches have to deal with that. There's a public shaming. Now, they don't call it a shaming, but it's you need to acknowledge to the body what you did and why you were firing you. And I spent the next 2 years shoveling snow and mowing lawns for a living. And the humiliation, I was still paying off student loans, and the humiliation that came with that led me to escape even further, and that's when the drinking started. My wife put up with the affair. She was very gracious, very kind, and she put up with that. After 5 years of hard drinking, she said, that's enough, I can't do that. And I found myself on the street. I got a little apartment and moved on. And that's when the drinking in my life really took off. Because there was nobody there. I didn't have to hide it anymore. Didn't have to hide it from my wife, didn't have to hide it from my kids. I could just drink. And I drank, and I drank, and I drank. Now, there's this myth amongst alcoholics, and we call it, well, he's a high, excuse me, told you I shouldn't have had that last cigarette. He's a high-functioning alcoholic. Folks, there's no such thing as a high-functioning alcoholic. We're delirious, we're delusional, we're manipulative, but we're certainly not high-functioning. The only person you'll ever hear say is a high-functioning alcoholic is an alcoholic. We are just wasting ourselves away, but I did okay, I hit it pretty well. And I got this wonderful job, another career, beautiful career. I became get this, in the midst of a blackout drunk alcoholic and a gambling addict, I became the director of spiritual care for the largest palliative hospital in Manitoba. And every day at 4:30 I'd leave my office. About 2 kilometers down the road, I'd stop into the liquor store. And before I got home, half of the 2.6 was gone and the other half was gone before I went to bed. Every night, night after night after night. I was gambling rather recklessly one night in a casino, and I lost way more money than I could possibly afford to lose. And I was seething angry. I was just, and I'm sitting there, no more money left. I'm sitting there at this blackjack table, flicking my lighter in my pocket, and I burned my thumb, and that was when it went from seething to absolute blind rage. And I pulled up my lighter, and I burned the underneath of the leather bumper that goes around, burned it, smoke comes off of it. I get up, I stumble backward, knock the chair over, walk by this silk plant. I light this silk plant on fire with my lighter. I went into the men's washroom. I lit the paper towel dispenser on one side on fire. I lit the paper towel dispenser on the other side on fire. And then I went back to work the next day. And everything was fine. Until the next day. That's when my phone rang about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I picked up the phone and I said, "Good afternoon, Spiritual Care Department. Brian here, how can I help you?" And a voice on the other end said, "My name is Detective Williams. I'm with the Winnipeg Arson Department. We've got some questions for you." And folks, my life fell apart. I served a 3-year federal prison sentence for crimes, most of which I don't remember. I simply do not remember what I did most of that night. But apparently, the charges were 13 charges of arson with endangering human life. And the judge was very gracious. It could have been far, far more. I was sentenced 3 years, I was charged 3 years before I was sentenced. A year and a half before I was sentenced on a 3-year term. So for a year and a half, I knew I was going to prison. I didn't know for how long yet, because the sentence hadn't happened, but I knew I was going to prison. And you would think a functional person, a high-functioning alcoholic would go, okay, that's enough. Not even close. Then it was an eighth of an ounce of pot every day and a 2-6 every day in order to keep myself being able to live with the horrific person I had become. I woke up every day for more than a year. I don't remember how much more than a year, but I'm going to say like a year and 3 weeks into my prison sentence. I woke up every day with the exact same thought. Oh my God, this isn't a dream. Folks, my life was unraveling like a cheap sweater, and I was spiraling down faster and faster and faster, and you'd think, okay, now he hasn't drinking in 3 years. He's been in prison. You get out, he's got to have fixed that. What I learned is until you fix the root, there's no fixing. And I kept doing it. I kept drinking. I wish he was here right now. He's in the playroom. My grandson is here with me today. Every year there's this tradition we have in our home where we, on the first Sunday of December, we decorate the Christmas tree together as a family. Now my wife lives my ex-wife lives in Manitoba. My girl's mother lives in Manitoba. I live out here on the West Coast. I live in the Fraser Valley. My children both happen to live in the Fraser Valley as well. And every year, the tradition that we established when they were just yay tall, we still do at my home. They come to my home and they decorate the Christmas tree with Dad the first Sunday of every December. And what a blessing that experience is. Well, Christmas 2020, 2 years ago, my grandson was going to be spending the night. And the kids came over, and we decorated the tree. And after the dishes were cleared after dinner, we sat down, and we started talking. And my oldest daughter said, Dad, I'm not going to allow Hudson to spend the night with you. You're in no condition to be with me. And with tears in their eyes, my children said, Dad, please, 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 get help. Please get help. Because if you don't, you're not going to see your grandson again. And if you don't, you're not going to see us again. What I've learned is that there are prisons built without bricks and mortar that are just as restrictive, just as condemning, just as damning as those built with. And I was still in prison. I was seeing a therapist at the time, and he said, well, let's get you help. The next day, by the way, the Monday after that we decorated the Christmas tree, I called a detox center, and for the first time in my life, I walked into a detox in early January. And on August 29th of 2020, my feet set down for the first time in my life in this wonderful city, Powell River. Folks, what a gift this place has been to me. Rob, in his introductory speech, said, we don't push religion on anybody. We don't push our faith on anybody. Well, the first day I got here, I think it was a Saturday, and the next day Rob says, hey, we're going to church, you're coming. Yeah, that's not happening. I went. That's when I went, Lucas, and you know what, I forgot your wife's name.
Lisa.
Lisa, yeah, thank you guys for what you do here in this place, for the impact you've had in my life and my community. Okay, I'm getting way off base here. I'm a writer. I write novels for a living. And 2 Christmases ago, Rob, the director, Rob said, would you be willing to write an article for the Kohat Living magazine, the Kohat Living magazine, on your experience in Christmas? And so I started out with this story about what brought me to, which was my kids saying, you're never going to see us again if you don't get your crap together, right? So I started out that way. Excuse me. And I then invited the reader. I said, I wish you could come into Miklat just for an afternoon and see what I've seen and see how it has changed my life. I said, I bet you've never in your life seen a heroin addict with goat's head tattoos all over his body embrace an alcoholic pastor and tell him he loves him. And I bet not once in your life have you seen an NFL football candidate draft on his knees scrubbing a toilet with a smile on his face. And I bet not once in your life have you seen a grade 7 coke. This poor kid dropped out of school in grade 7 to help his mother traffic cocaine. I bet you've never seen a grade 7 dropout write poetry so raw and so beautiful that it brought tears to your eyes. But you would if you could experience what I get to experience in that house, and the healing that comes to us when we work the program we work. Now, this is where the story takes just a really weird twist, okay? I took some artistic license in writing that article. I had been hugged by a heroin addict with goat's head tattoos and told me he loved me. And I had read poetry by a grade 7 dropout that was so moving that it brought tears to your eyes. But I'd never seen this NFL draft candidate actually on his hands and knees scrubbing a toilet with a smile on his face. And now I know the guy well enough to know if he was scrubbing a toilet, he'd have a smile on his face. But I hadn't experienced it. Well, that night, I'm at the Atlanta Club at an AA meeting. After the AA meeting, I go to use the restroom and I walk in and somebody had, I'll be kind, defecated on the toilet seat and the floor. And I went, walked out, went to the other one. There's 2, thankfully. Went to the other one, did my business, washed my hands, came back out, and all of a sudden this thought struck me. You know what? This is a program of service. That's what they really push in AA. This is a program of service. And I got this thought, grab some paper towel, get some cleaner, go clean that mess. That's your job. So I went to do it. Well, lo and behold, COVID protocol, and there's AA members that are wiping down seats with paper towel and disinfectant, cleaning them all. And so I went up to this NFL draft candidate and said, hey, can I have your cleaner? And he said, no, you're not doing that, I'll do it. He went in there, and not 2 minutes later, I see this NFL draft candidate on his knees, scrubbing a toilet. He looks at me with this smile ear to ear. Folks, I wrote that 4 hours ago in a magazine. You couldn't write this stuff, but I did, and that's because all of us, this is what that did for me, folks. This is what that did for me. You see, I didn't believe in a personal God anymore. I defied God to show me that he was personal. And that night, I laid in bed, tears streaming down my face because it was God. It was almost like God was laughing, saying, not personal, huh? You couldn't have done that. You couldn't have made that man get on his knees and clean that, but I could. And it was an aha moment for me. An aha moment like so many that I have experienced in that house. For people like you. And that man there, how many crib games you and I sat down, and it started out as just a game, but you spoke to my life, and you showed this wasted drunk that there was more to life than throwing it all away. Folks, I am so blessed today. I am so blessed because I walked into that place a broken man, and I got, you know what, it was a little bit like playing a country music song backwards. You know what happens when you play a country music song backwards, right? You get your horse back, you get your truck back, you get your girl back, you get your car back. Well, when I went to Miklat, you know what I got? I got my self-respect back. I got my dignity back. I got my children back. I got my grandson back. I got my life back. And who wouldn't want that? You know, I've experienced more losses in my life than I would wish upon my worst enemy. The loss of careers, the loss of any hope for retirement. Unless I write a #1 bestseller, I'm going to be working till the day I die. I've lost my family. Those are the measurable losses, but there were so many immeasurable losses. The loss of dignity, the loss of self-esteem, the loss of hope. All of that came back to me. Cece mentioned it just before. He said this, and this is part of the promises. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity, that'll disappear. I've experienced that. I don't have to live that way any longer. I have a sense of purpose that I've never, ever known before in my life. I was talking to a couple guys out back earlier this evening. And I said, you know what? I said, I wake up in the morning and joy fills me. I lay my head at night and I don't have to wonder what I've done during the day that's going to come back and haunt me. Today life is good. Today life is amazing, and I owe it all to the men and women of Miklat Recovery Society. They gave me my life back, and I could not be more thankful. My heart floods over every time I think of you folks. I don't come back here a lot. I came back here because they asked me to share with you tonight what Miklat means to me. And I hope by now you've got a glimpse of what that place has done in my life. And I know that you're supporting a place like Miklat. I know that it will change lives. I know it, I know it, I know it. And you know it. I know it in the same way as I know that you will never find a blue elephant in Denmark. Thank you, folks.